Sekoho Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shivasili Gaura Bhaktivinoda Ki Jai.
Jai.
Shri Radha Krishna Gopa Gopinath Shyama Kund Radha Kund Giri Govardhan Ki Jai.
Jai.
Vrindavan Dham Ki Jai.
Jai.
Mayapur Dham Ki Jai.
Jai.
Yamuna Mai Ki Jai. Ganga
Jai.
Mai Ki Jai. Bhakti
Jai.
Devi Ki Jai. Tulasi Maharani Ki Jai.
Jai.
Bhavadeva Bhaktivinoda Ki Jai.
Jai.
Glories to the assembled devotees.
Hare Krishna.
The assembled devotees.
Hare
All
Krishna.
glories to the assembled devotees.
Hare Krishna.
All glories to Sri Guru and Sri Gauranga.
Hare Krishna.
Namo Vishnu Hare Krishna Krishna Buddha Shrimati Bhaktivedanta Swami Namane Namaste Saraswati Devi Gauni Prachayane Nirvisheshan Hari Pastadati Shtarane Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya
Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya.
Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya
Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya.
Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya
Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya.
Reading from Srimad Bhagavatam, Canto 3, The Status Quo, Chapter 14, Pregnancy of Diti in the Evening, Text 26. Just waiting for the shloka to go up, or should I post it? Okay, there we are, sorry. Nayasya loke swajana parova natyajito nota kaschid vigarya Vayam vratarya charana pavidham ashasmahe jambata bhukta bogam Nayasya loke swajana parova natyajito nota kaschit vigarhya Vayam vratarya charana pavidham ashasmahe jambata bhukta bogam Nayasya loke swajana parova natyajito nota kaschid vigarya Vayam vratarya charana pavidham ashasmahe jambata bhukta bogam. Everyone can chant.
हरे कृष्ण
Hare Krishna.
न अस्या लोका स जनः परो भा नत्यादृतो नोता कश्चिद्भिर्यया वयं भ्रतैर्यश्चरणारुपविद्धम् अशास्महे जम्बट भुक्ता भोगम् हरे कृष्ण
नयस्य लोके स्वजना परो वा नत्यादृतो नोत कश्चिद्विगर्हया वयं व्रतिर्यच्चरणापविधिं विद्धं यशास्महेजं बत भुक्तभोगाम् Hare Krishna.
Anyone else? Okay. Word for word translation. Na, never. Yasya, of whom. Loke, in the world. Swajana, kinsman. Para, unconnected. Va, nor. Na, neither. Ati, greater, Advita, favorable, Na, not, Uta, or, Kaschit, anyone, Vigarhya, criminal, Vayam, we, Vratai, by vows, Yat, whose, Charana, feet, Apavidham, rejected, Ashasmahe, respectfully worship, Ajam, Mahaprasad, Bhakta, certainly, Bhukta remnants of foodstuff. Translation. Lord Shiva regards no one as his relative, yet there is no one who is not connected with him. He does not regard anyone as very favorable or abominable. We respectfully worship the remnants of his foodstuff, and we vow to accept what is rejected by him. Purport by His Divine Grace Srila Prabhupada. Kashyapa informed his wife that just because Lord Shiva happened to be his brother-in-law, that should not encourage her in her offense towards him. Kashyapa warned her that actually Lord Shiva is not connected with anyone, nor is anyone his enemy. Since he is one of the three controllers of the universal affairs, he is equal to everyone. His greatness is incomparable because he is a great devotee of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. It is said that among all the devotees of the Personality of Godhead, Lord Shiva is the greatest. Thus, the remnants of foodstuff left by him are accepted by other devotees as Mahaprasad, or great spiritual foodstuff. The remnants of foodstuff offered to Lord Krishna are called prasad. But when the same prasad is eaten by a great devotee like Lord Shiva, it is called Mahaprasad. Lord Shiva is so great that he does not care for the material prosperity for which every one of us is so eager. Parvati, who is the powerful material nature personified, is under his full control as his wife, yet he does not use her even to build a residential house. He prefers to remain without shelter, and his great wife also agrees to live with him humbly. People in general worship Goddess Durga, the wife of Lord Shiva, for material prosperity, but Lord Shiva engages her in his service without material desire. He simply advises his great wife that of all kinds of worship, the worship of Vishnu is the highest, and greater than that is the worship of a great devotee or anything in relation with Vishnu.
9:30 వస్తుంది.
Nayasya loke swajana parova natyajito nota kaschit vikarya vayam vitaryacharanaapavidham ashasmahe jambatu bhukto bhogam. Lord Shiva regards no one as his relative, yet there is no one who is not connected with him. He does not regard anyone as very favorable or abominable. We respectfully worship the remnants of his foodstuff, and we vow to accept what is rejected by him. Nama Om Vishnu Padaya Krishna Prasthaya Bhutale Srimate Bhaktivedanta Swaminiti Namine Namaste Saraswate Deve Gauravani Pracharine Nirvishesha Shunyavadi Paschatya Deshatarine. This is very interesting and very nice description and glorification of Lord Shiva, who he is, what he is. We know that Diti is approaching Kashyapa in order to produce children, and he's advising her, yes, I'll do that, but wait just a little while. This is not auspicious time, this particular Sanya, because Lord Shiva is moving about at this time, and his associates are all these ghosts and hobgoblins and what we would consider monstrous and bizarre and unfortunate personalities. So this is not an auspicious time. And but it happens anyway, and he advises her to beg forgiveness of Lord Shiva because he's so great, he's so merciful, and these are some of the descriptions here. And Lord Shiva, he's truly unique personality. Kshiram yata dadi vikara vishesha yoga sanjayate nahi tata pritagasti heto yashambutam apitata samupaiti karyat govindamadi purusham tamaham bhajami. Now, the first point of that particular Brahma Samhita verse is it ends Govindamadi purusham tamaham bhajami, that we worship Govinda, the Supreme Personality, the original personality. Tamaham Bhaja, I worship him. So that means that this proper description and proper understanding of Lord Shiva is part of worshiping Govinda. We need to understand the position of Lord Shiva for our worship of Govinda, for our worship of Krishna. So what is that relationship? What is he? What is his position? Kshiram yata dadhi vikara vishesha yogat. There's milk. And when milk is treated by a certain substance or a certain process, then that milk becomes transformed, and it becomes transformed into curd, into yogurt. Kshiram yata dadi vikara. The milk undergoes a transformation. Sanjayate nahi tata pritagasti heto. So that means in one sense, there's no difference between milk and yogurt. And yet the milk is the cause and the yogurt is the effect. So in the same way, yashambhutam apitata, samupaiti karyat. Samupaiti karyat means for a particular purpose, for a reason, for an activity, for some duty to be carried out. A Lord Shiva appears, just as the milk is transformed into yogurt for a particular purpose. You don't do in cooking or in eating or drinking, you don't utilize milk and yogurt in exactly the same way. You turn milk into yogurt for a particular purpose. So Lord Shiva has his purpose by which he is created, manifest as this transformation of Krishna, as this expansion or manifestation of Krishna in a particular way for a particular purpose. He's not pritagasti heto. He's not separate from Krishna, but Krishna is still the original cause. Govindam Adi Purusham. He's still the cause, but at the same time, Lord Shiva is non-different from Krishna, simultaneously one and different. And what is the purpose? Now, of course, there's so many purposes: the destruction of the universe, different pastimes, different activities Lord Shiva undergoes for the creation, maintenance, and destruction of the universe, just like in the creation. One part of that process is Lord Vishnu glances upon the material energy, and the halo, the effulgence of that glance of Lord Vishnu is an aspect of Lord Shiva himself. So he has so many purposes, but if we boil it down to the most basic concept, the purpose is for Lord Shiva to be the servant of Lord Krishna. This is the purpose for any expansion, for any creation, for any manifestation. All the expansions of Krishna, like Lord Shiva, they're all bhaktas and for the sake of bhakti. And there's so many different expansions that Krishna undergoes. So many different incarnations and appearances. I know I've told this story more than once in the past, but I like this story very much. I'll share it again. Very early at 26 2nd Avenue, Prabhupada started teaching the very young, very new devotees there from Chaitanya Charitamrita, from Mahaprabhu's teachings to Sanatana Goswami. And he was teaching them about the different incarnations. So one morning, and at the time, Satsvarup Maharaj, who at that time I think was still Stephen, he used to take notes for class every day. Every morning when Prabhupada gave class, he would take notes. So Prabhupada was explaining about the different Vishnu expansions in Vaikuntha. And they have their 4 arms, 1, 2, 3, 4. And in those arms, they're holding Shankha, Padma, Chakra, and Gada. And one Vishnu is holding them in this order, A, B, C, D. A different Vishnu is holding them in a different order, D, C, B, A, like that. And the different positions in which they're holding the 4 instruments determines the name of the different Vishnus. So Satsvarup Maharaj says, Stephen says, as he's taking notes, should I write this down? Prabhupada said, no, you don't have to. You don't have to learn this detail or necessarily record this detail. And then the next day, he's giving class again on the incarnations, and he's describing how there's Guna avatars, Yuga avatars, Leela avatars, all these different types of avatars. And he points to Stephen, to Satsvarup, and says, this you should write down, this you should take note of. So Krishna has so many different varieties of expansions, just like amongst the demigods or amongst the Guna avatars. Lord Shiva is one of them. And he's expanded, and his position is to be the servant of Krishna, the devotee of Krishna, the Krishna Bhakta. And all the expansions of all his different incarnations, all his different expansions, all of them are to be servant. Ekale Ishwara Krishna, Arasa Britya, Yara Yaiche Nachaya Se Taiche Kari Nritya. That Ekale Ishwara Krishna, there's one Ishwara, there's one supreme controller, and that is Krishna, only Krishna. Arasabha Britya. And all the others, Arasabha, all the others, not just the living entities, but all the different expansions of Krishna, including Vishnu expansions and demigod expansions, and all of them, Britya, all of them are meant to be the servant of Krishna. There's one supreme controller, Krishna, and literally, without exception, anyone and everyone and everything else is his servant. Yaraye che nachaya se taiche kare nritya. And all of them are dancing in the way that Krishna is directing them to dance. So especially Lord Shiva, he's famous for his dancing, right? His Tandava Nritya, his dance of destruction of the universe. But taken figuratively, not literally, figuratively, dancing means all of our activities in this world are being directed by Krishna. Means that all of the activities of all the expansions, all of the living entities are meant for Krishna's pleasure, are meant to be devotional service. Therefore, a great and prominent expansion like Lord Shiva, of course he's a devotee. Of course he's a first-class, topmost devotee of Krishna to fulfill this. And there are other expansions. That's the Guna avatars. Lord Shiva, he's practically like Lord Vishnu, but he's a transformation, just like yogurt is practically milk, but it's for a different purpose. So therefore, Lord Shiva is the eternal servant of Krishna and always recognizes and understands himself as a devotee of Krishna. Another line of expansions is through the different Vishnu incarnations. And what's the very first of those expansions? Lord Balaram. Lord Balaram is the first Vishnu expansion of Krishna, and he recognizes himself as the servant of Krishna. And through him, this mood of servitude is distributed all over the universe. In Chaitanya Charitamrita, it says, Bhakta Abhiman Mula Shri Balaram. Bhakta Abhiman, the conception, the mentality, situation of being a bhakta, of being a devotee. Mula Sri Balaram. Lord Balaram is the root. Mula means root. Lord Balaram is the root of that. He's the original source of that sentiment of servitude. Se bhave anugata tanra amsagana. And all of the expansions following from Lord Balaram, that means all of the different Vishnus, hundreds, thousands, millions, unlimited of Vishnus, Vishnus in the Vaikuntha planets, Vishnus in the different avatars in this world, all the Purusha avatars, everything, the Chaturvyuha, all of them are the servant of Krishna, following in the footsteps of Lord Balaram. As Lord Shiva is topmost primary expansion amongst the Devatas and establishes himself as Krishna Bhakta. So in the same way, Balaram is again the first, the topmost, the original expansion amongst the Vishnus. And he also establishes himself as servant of Krishna, as Krishna Bhakta. And we see that in all of the pastimes of Krishna and Balaram in the spiritual world, in Goloka, that Lord Balaram is the servant of Krishna. Prabhupada said many times he's explained that Krishna is black, Sham, blackish, and Balaram is white. Otherwise, there's no difference. But there is a difference at the same time. And that difference is that, again, just like with Lord Shiva, Kshiram Yata Dadi, the milk and the yogurt, there's no difference, but there's a difference. So similarly, Krishna and Balaram, there's no difference, but there's a difference. Just like Prabhupada once asked, who is stronger? I think this was in Vrindavan, in front of Krishna Balaram deities. He asked, who's stronger, Krishna or Balaram? And he said, Krishna is stronger because Lord Balaram is like this. He's leaning, right? If we've seen the deities and similar deities down here in Alachua, Krishna and Balaram. And Balaram, like that, is leaning on Krishna. That indicates that Krishna is the support. And Balaram is being supported by Lord Krishna. So he's Bhakta Abhiman Mula. He's the root of this sentiment of being the servant of Krishna and all the expansions coming from him. And then there's other expansions. Krishna has expansions of Shakti Tattva. And who is the most intimate, the first, the topmost expansion of Krishna's Shakti? And that's Radhika. And what is her position? She is the best devotee. Very, very early in the again, going back to 26 Second Avenue, in the very first year of people being devotees, and Radhastami came, and he explained in a very simple way that Radharani, who is Radharani? She is the best servant of Krishna. And why is she the best servant of Krishna? Because she loves Krishna the most. So it put in a very simple way, but this establishes Radhika, the very first expansion of the Shakti Tattva. And she also is establishing herself as servant of Krishna. Just like in the Bhagavatam, Anaya Radhito Nunam, Bhagavan Harir Ishwara, Yano Vihaya Govindam Prito Yam Anayadraha. That in the Rasa dance, Krishna disappeared from the Rasa dance, and the gopis are looking for Krishna, going mad, looking for Krishna. And of course, they love Krishna so much. Why? Because they're also expansions from Radhika. But they're looking and they see the footprints of Krishna and one other gopi who in the Srimad Bhagavatam remains explicitly unnamed. But who is that gopi? Anaya Radhito Nunam. This gopi must have worshipped Krishna better than any of us. And Anaya Aradhita, that word Aradhita is a hidden way of indicating Radharani. So all the expansions of Krishna, Lord Shiva, Lord Balaram, Lord Shiva and all the demigods, Balaram and all the Vishnu expansions, Radhika and all the Shakti Tattva. Now, we're not Shakti Tattva in the same way that Radhika is, but in another sense, we living entities are also Shakti Tattva. Vishnu Shakti Para Prokta, Kshetra Gyat Gyat Tatak Para, that we living entities, we're also the spiritual energy of Krishna. So that means as Radhika is meant for serving Krishna and loving Krishna and recognizes her and her entire existence is bent towards that goal. So that means we, just like Lord Shiva, just like Balaram, just like Radhika and the gopis, our purpose, our existence is the same, just like that. All because of being part and parcel of Krishna, expansion of Krishna, having this eternal relationship with Krishna. Therefore, Lord Shiva is such a wonderful example for us. And as Prabhupada mentions in the purport, that he's the best devotee, Vaishnavanam Yata Shambhu. So we learn from Lord Shiva how to be a devotee. We don't worship Lord Shiva independently. What's the Kamaistastar Rita Jnana? Kamaistastar Rita Jnana Prapadyantenya Devata. That if your heart is filled with lust, Kamaistastar, if you're filled with all material desires, Rita Jnana, then your intelligence becomes twisted and perverted and stolen away. Those are the type of persons that worship the demigods independently. Later on, same chapter, was just Antavatu Palam Tesham, Tad Bhavatyalpamadasam. Again, Alpamadasam, the brain substance of the persons who worship the demigods, very small brain substance, tiny brain substance, not intelligent. Or Rita Jnana, their intelligence is stolen away by their material desires. But Lord Shiva teaches us that we worship Krishna, we surrender to Krishna, we do not worship the demigods. So what are some of the glories of Lord Shiva? They're described in today's verse, some of them. Nayasya loke swajana parova. That he has nothing to do with this world. He has nothing to do, no attachment, no dependence to anyone or anything in this world. Natyajito nota kaschid vigarya. And yet at the same, Nayasya loke swajano parava. And yet everyone is his swajana. Everyone is related to him. He's related to everyone. And at the same time, he's completely separate and detached from everyone. Again, because he's the first expansion from Krishna, just like Krishna himself has no friends and enemies. He envies no one. He favors no one. So Lord Shiva also embodies that he favors no one based on some material criteria. And yet, because he's also related to everyone, everyone is related to him. He's merciful to everyone. There's no material basis for his conception of friend and enemy, but he's rather merciful to anyone. Natyajito nota kaschid vigarya. They may be pious, they may be criminal, but he's so merciful that he gives shelter to all. Vayam vritaryat charanapavidham. He rejects that. This is interesting and a little puzzling at first in the verse. This yat charanapavidham. We respectfully worship and we vow to accept what is rejected by him. Prabhupada doesn't explicitly explain this in the verse, but Srila Jiva Goswami explains what this means, that what is charanapavidham, that what is rejected by his lotus feet is that he rejects all praise and power and independent power, independent glory. He rejects all of that, and he has no use for any of that. And what does it mean when he says that we accept those things that he rejects? It means we can use the potency left by Lord Shiva in his service and in the service of Krishna. But Lord Shiva, for his own part, accepts no glory, accepts no prestige, accepts no potency for himself. And because he's so materially detached, yet at the same time so very merciful, therefore, uh, Ashasmahe Jam Bata Bhukta Bogam. Therefore, we feel very pleased and very honored to accept the Bhukta Bogam, to enjoy the remnants of foodstuffs left by him. Now, all the food taken by Lord Shiva is naturally Krishna Prasad. So his remnants are the remnants of a great devotee eating Krishna Prasad. And Prabhupada explains, and we all know this, that this is called Mahaprasad or Mahaprasad. That Prasad is Krishna's remnants, and Mahaprasad is Krishna's remnants as remnants from the great devotee. I wasn't present due to my foolishness and impiety. I was not present in ISKCON during Prabhupada's time, but we all know how the devotees would be mad to get the remnants of Srila Prabhupada. And in the early days, even they got remnants not of just Srila Prabhupada's plate, but even what he cooked. So what kind of amazing mercy is that? And to get Srila Prabhupada's remnants after eating is such a glorious thing, the devotees' remnants. There's one nice story. There was one festival, and Prabhupada was on his Vyasasan, and all the devotees were seated at his feet, all lined up and taking prasad. And Tamal Krishna Maharaj was there, and next to him was a devotee, Jai Gopal, a devotee who I think is no longer with us. I think, unfortunately, he died in a car accident, actually during the time of Prabhupada's presence. But Jai Gopal was sitting next to him, and Jai Gopal reached over to Tamal Krishna Maharaj's plate, snatched a sweet ball off of it, and popped it in his mouth. And Tamal Krishna Maharaj got really angry at him. I don't know if he yelled at him or physically assaulted him, but he was very upset. And Prabhupada saw it and laughed. And he said, Jai Gopal has made very much advancement today. So the devotees' remnants, and actually everything we offer is actually also Prabhupada's remnants, because that's how we do an offering. We offer to Krishna through the spiritual master. That means the Krishna Prasad is also Prabhupada Prasad. So this is the beauty of the devotee, that the prasad of the devotee, originally coming from Krishna, is even more special, Maha, than just Krishna's remnants. Just like worshiping Krishna becomes even more glorious when we worship Krishna through his great devotees. Naham vipro nacha narapatir napi vaishyo nasujo naham varni nacha griyapatir navanos tu yatirva. I'm not a Brahmana Kshatriya Vaishya Suja. I'm not a Brahmachari Grihasta Vanaprastha Sannyasi. Kintu Pradyan Nikila Paramananda something, I'm forgetting the verse now. Gopi Bhartu Padakamai or Dasa Dasa Das. What is my identity? Not I'm servant of Krishna, but I'm the servant of the servant of the servant, a million times removed from Krishna, the consort of the gopis. So this is glorious. Lord Shiva understands this, and some of the followers of Lord Shiva understand this. Like I said, those who worship Lord Shiva independently of Krishna, Hrita their intelligence is taken away. And this is actually one of the offenses to the holy name, to think that Lord Shiva, Lord Brahma, this demigod, that demigod are on an equal level with Krishna. This is a great offense. But those who are actually devotees understand this about Lord Shiva. And because of that, one of Lord Shiva's names is Asutosh. He's so easily pleased. He's so merciful, he'll accept anyone. Now, he's very easily pleased, which is his glory, But that also means that some of his followers are not always of the very best character because he accepts followers so easily, so mercifully, so readily. Just like it's described that he's traveling around. That was 2 days ago, or on Monday's class, I guess it was. Lord Shiva, the king of the ghosts, this is text 24, sitting on the back of his bull carrier, travels at this time accompanied by ghosts who follow him for their welfare. So he's merciful. He's trying to benefit the ghosts, but he's in the association of Bhuta Bhavana. He's being merciful to the ghostly creatures. Bhuta Parshadbir. He's surrounded by them. His associates are these ghostly creatures, and he's Bhutarat. He's the Lord and master of these ghostly creatures. So, because of that, you don't want to, according to Kashyapa, this is not a proper time for conception, because although Lord Shiva is very glorious, these ghostly creatures are roaming about. It's not a good time. So those are one class of his followers, these ghosts and goblins and monstrous sort of creatures. But he's trying to benefit them. He's their well-wisher. Uh, Another class of his followers are the demons, actual demons, asuras. Like we know the story of Vrikasura. So foolish and so materialistic, worshiping Lord Shiva to get a benediction. What's the benediction? That anyone's head that I touch with my hand, his head will crack open. This is the demoniac mentality. Lord Shiva is Asutosh. He wants to benefit these people. But because because Ritagyana, because they don't understand Lord Shiva, they don't understand Lord Krishna, they're worshiping improperly, their intelligence is stolen away. Kamastastar Ritagyana, because of their lusty material desires, they don't know how to benefit themselves. So he begged this from Lord Shiva, he got the benediction, and he's so materialistic that he thought, how do I know if this is true? I'm going to test it on Lord Shiva himself. So he started chasing him to touch his head and crack his head open. So this is the mentality of the materialistic demigod worshippers. Do not understand. They don't understand Krishna. They don't even understand how to worship the demigods properly. Just like Prabhupada also tells a story about the Durga worshipper. In the purport, Prabhupada says that people approach Durga for material benefits. So one foolish person went to the Durga temple and approached the deity. Oh, goddess, please give me some wealth. If you give me wealth, I'll offer you in sacrifice one nice goat in sacrifice if you give me wealth. So it turned out that he actually got some great wealth after making this offer, but he never went back to the temple to offer the goat in sacrifice. So one day he happened to go to the temple, and the deity actually spoke to him and said, "Oh, my dear worshiper, you asked for wealth and I gave you wealth, but you never did the goat sacrifice." And he said, "Oh, my dear goddess, it's so very difficult to get a goat, to find a goat. It's expensive, it's troublesome. I can't find the proper goat. It's very hard." And she said, "Well, you made a promise, at least offer me something." And she said, "Offer me anything, offer me one fly in sacrifice." And the foolish demigod worshiper, Kamastastar Ritagyana, said, "Oh, my dear goddess, there's so many flies buzzing around you already, and you have your 4 arms or 8 arms in your Durga manifestation. Can't you just capture one yourself?" So this is the gross mentality of the exaggerated for the sake of the story, but still an example of the mentality of the demigod worshippers. So this is one kind of worshiper. These foolish, materialistic ghosts and demons and materially motivated people who foolishly, apapavidam, who, not according to proper regulations, worship the demigods separately from Krishna. This is one kind. Then there's another kind of follower of Lord Shiva, and these are the impersonalists, the Mayavadis. They're also followers of Lord Shiva. Shankaracharya, it's described as an expansion and incarnation of Lord Shiva, come for the purpose of bewildering the population in order to see to the increase of the sinfulness of Kali Yuga by teaching this Mayavad philosophy. And because Mayavad philosophy rarely sticks, it almost always rebounds into materialistic life. So it actually increases the sinfulness of Kali Yuga. So this is another type of follower of Lord Shiva. Of course, Shankaracharya also had his proper purpose to come. This is described very nicely. I always like this old essay from His Grace Ravindra Swarup Prabhu. I think it's called Spiritual Strategies for the Age of Iron. And he describes how the original Vedic Siddhanta is Krishna Bhakti. But later on, that got overtaken by Smarta Brahmanas, who turned it into rituals, empty rituals, a blind, oppressive caste system, animal sacrifice for the sake of material prestige and material rewards. And thus the original Vedic teachings of Krishna Bhakti became corrupted. So in order to overcome that, to turn that around, Krishna, he has his near-term strategies where he comes himself and sends his devotees to preach, but he also has long-term strategies stretching over thousands of years. So part of that strategy was, okay, I'll come in my Buddha incarnation and teach you, reject the Vedas, reject the animal sacrifice, because it had become so twisted and so sinful that they were unable to understand. If someone's a meat eater, it's virtually impossible to understand Krishna consciousness and to worship Krishna. So he came as Lord Buddha. Oh, reject these Vedas. They teach animal sacrifice. You reject this, you don't kill the poor animals. So that at least people did not have that burden of sin. But it was still not a return to Krishna consciousness. It was one step. So then after that, he came as Shankaracharya, teaching a very similar philosophy to Buddhism. This Nirvishesha Shunyavadi is shared by Buddhism and by Advaita Vedanta, as taught by Shankaracharya. But at least he brought it back under the auspices of the Vedic literature. And then after him came the Vaishnavacharyas, Ramanujacharya and Madhavacharya in particular, who refuted on the basis of Shastra, which Shankaracharya had returned the authority of Shastra, but the later Vaishnavacharyas, on the basis of Shastra, rejected Shankaracharya and reestablished the teachings of Krishna Bhakti, and now is perfected by the appearance of Mahaprabhu, who took two elements from each of the four proper Vaishnavacharyas and synthesized it into the Gaudiya Vaishnava Siddhanta. From Ramanujacharya, Ramanujacharya was the Acharya from the Lakshmi Sampradaya. He extracted Ananya Bhakti, which means devotion free from any trace of karma and jnana, and Bhakta Jana Seva, service to the devotees. From Madhvacharya, the Brahma Sampradaya, in which we have the good fortune to be, he extracted the principles of Kevala, Advaita, Nirasana, complete defeat and complete rejection of Mayavad philosophy, and Krishnamurti Sevana, the establishment of the proper worship of the deity of Krishna in the temple. From the Vishnu Swami, who was in the Rudra Sampradaya, again, this is the followers of Lord Shiva, right? This is the third type of follower of Lord Shiva. There's the crazy, lusty, foolish, materialistic followers. There's the impersonalist followers, and the third are the actual Vaishnava followers. And specifically, that's the Rudra Sampradaya, headed by Vishnu Swami Acharya. And he taught the two teachings which Mahaprabhu extracted from his teaching, is Tadya Sarvaswabhav, the sentiment of being totally dependent upon Krishna, and Ragamarg, the path of spontaneous devotional service. And from the fourth Sampradaya, coming from the four Kumaras through Nimbarka Swami, he extracted Ekanta Radhikashraya, taking exclusive shelter of Radhika, and Gopi Bhav, the mood of the gopis' love for Krishna. So there's these three types of followers of Lord Shiva, the demons, the impersonalists, and the Vaishnavas. And we're not in the Rudra Sampradaya, but so much history of Lord Shiva is there, and we take him as our teacher, as our guru, as our good example. We absolutely do not worship him independently. There's no need to do that, but we appreciate and learn from him. Vaishnavanam yata Shambhu. I can't remember that whole verse from the 12th canto, but Nimna Gana something Ganga, that of all the rivers, the Ganga is the best. And of all the Devatas, Achyuta is the best. Achyuta is Krishna. And Vaishnavanam yata Shambhu, of all the Vaishnavas, Lord Shiva is the best. And of all the Puranas, of all the scriptures, Srimad Bhagavatam is the best. So all the Vaishnavas respect Lord Shiva. All the Vaishnavas learn for him, and he's so exemplary in his detachment, his material detachment. His wife is the goddess of the material energy. That means anything, literally anything he wants, anything he desires within this material world is available to him. But he doesn't even want a house. He doesn't even want a roof over his head because he's simply satisfied in Krishna consciousness. And his wife is equally great devotee, and she follows in his footsteps. And Lord Shiva and his relationship with Parvati, so instructive. Prabhupada mentions in the purport, today's purport, he simply advises his great wife that all kinds of worship, the worship of Vishnu is the highest, and greater than that is the worship of a great devotee or anything in relation with Vishnu. Prabhupada here is referencing very famous verse from the Padma Purana. Aradhananam sarvesham, Vishnur aradhanam param. Tasmat parataram devi tadyanam samarchanam. In the Padma Purana, in the Uttarakhanda, Lord Shiva spends a long time recounting all of the past, not all, but recounting the pastimes of Krishna and the pastimes of Lord Rama to his wife Parvati, and she's relishing it and in ecstasy hearing about it. And after hearing long katha of all these different pastimes of Krishna and Rama, she says to her husband, please explain to me what's the proper way to worship the Supreme Personality of Godhead. He's so amazing. He's so wonderful. I'm in ecstasy hearing these pastimes. How should we worship him? And he gives lots of details about how to install the deity, and so many things are there. But this verse is there, Aradhananam sarvesham. Just like I said earlier, Anaya Radito Nunam. So Aradhananam means worship. Aradhananam sarvesham, of all types of worship. Vishnur Aradhanam param. Of all types of worship, the topmost worship is the worship of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Tasmat parataram Devi. Parataram means Vishnu Aradhanam param. Worship of Vishnu is the highest, but parataram means even higher. Tasmat parataram Devi, but oh goddess, oh Parvati, even higher than the worship of Vishnu Tadyanam samarchanam is the worship of Tadya. Tadya means paraphernalia, and it means things connected with. So the paraphernalia of Krishna, just like what's that? That as Krishna is worshipable, so his abode of Vrindavan is worshipable. What's that verse? It's just on the tip of my brain. I can't quite remember it. Does anyone remember that? As Krishna is worshipable, so Tadam Vrindavanam and Srimad Bhagavatam are worshipable. Anyway, I can't remember that verse right now. But all the paraphernalia, Vrindavan Dham, as worshipable or even more worshipable than Krishna. Radhika, the first expansion, as worshipable or even more worshipable than Krishna. And in a more general sense, Krishna's devotees, even more worshipable. Krishna also says that someone who worships me directly, claiming to be my devotee, is not actually my devotee. But that person who worships my devotees, he is actually my devotee. So this is the teaching of Lord Shiva, explaining this. Another nice teaching. I'll just give one more and then we'll wrap it up. That was from the Padma Purana, that particular verse. In the Srimad Bhagavatam itself, in the pastime of Maharaj Chitraketu, who inadvertently didn't actually, but was perceived by Parvati as neglecting or not properly respecting her husband, Lord Shiva. So she became angry and cursed Chitraketu. And Chitraketu said, yeah, sure, whatever, fine with me. Curse me, it doesn't matter. Whatever you do is proper. Everything is under the control of the Lord. That's fine. And Parvati was struck by that. And Lord Shiva explained to her that Chitraketu is such a great devotee that you curse him, you praise him, it doesn't matter. He's so fixed in Krishna consciousness. And another, maybe the other, also equally famous teaching by Lord Shiva to Parvati is Narayana Parak Sarve Nakutaschana Bibyati Swargapavarga Narakeshwapi Tularta Darshanam. That Narayana Para, those who are completely surrendered to the Supreme Personality of Godhead, it doesn't matter. You send them to heaven, you send them to hell, you praise them, you curse them, you bless them, you curse them. They're rich, they're poor, they're enjoying, they're suffering. It doesn't matter. They're so fixed in their position of Krishna consciousness that none of that matters. And Prabhupada gave the example of the denki, if I'm pronouncing it right. A denki is the Hindi word for the wheat thresher. When wheat is harvested and then the chaff is separated from the wheat grains, and that's what the thresher does. And Prabhupada explained that you take the denki to heaven, and what does it do? What does it do? It threshes wheat. You take the denki to hell, what does it do? Same thing, it threshes wheat. So you take the devotee to heaven, to hell, or anywhere in between. His business is the same. He's undisturbed worshiping Krishna consistently throughout all that. So therefore, these devotees, we worship these great devotees like Lord Shiva, like Srila Prabhupada, because they're tadyanam, they're Krishna's paraphernalia, they're Krishna's expansions, Krishna's tools, Sangopangastra Parshadam, right? The expansions and associates and weapons. Prabhupada was a weapon in Krishna's hand to defeat Kali Yuga and establish Krishna consciousness as much as a club or a Sudarshan chakra. And because of that, worshipable. Just like again in that verse from the 12th canto, Ganges is the most worshipable river. Why? Because of its connection with Krishna. It's the water that has washed Krishna's lotus feet. Therefore, it's worshipable. Lord Shiva is the most worshipable. Why? He's this amazing expansion of Krishna, so fixed in love and service and devotion to Krishna. What's the other one? Srimad Bhagavatam is the most worshipable scripture. Why? Because it's exclusively about Krishna. Vyasadeva, in his mature realization, after lamenting his previous creations, his previous literary creations, and learning from Narada Muni, he did not sufficiently exclusively focus on Krishna. Therefore, he gave us Srimad Bhagavatam. And because of that, Srimad Bhagavatam is the most worshipable. And Lord Shiva. Ganji, what is it? Oh, and of course, the Lord himself amongst all the devatas is the most worshipable. So this is Lord Shiva. Diti made a mistake. She got a little bit carried away. And Lord Shiva and Kashyapa, her good husband, is explaining to her, Lord Shiva is so wonderful, so merciful, and they even have some family relationship. He says, don't take that as a excuse, but he's so merciful, you need to beg his forgiveness because he's such a great devotee. Thank you very much for your very kind attention. All glories to Srila Prabhupada. If there's any questions or comments, we can discuss now. Yes, Vishnu Gadaprabhu.
Hare Krishna, Acharya. Thank you.
Hare Krishna, sir.
Thank you. So a couple of things. One, you were mentioned several times about not worshiping Lord Shiva separately. And so then perhaps you would give some suggestion about how to worship Lord Shiva not separately, if that's something we should do. And the other thing is, in the verse, it describes how Kashyapa said we worship the remnants of his foodstuffs. So would you recommend devotees accept the prasadam of Lord Shiva?
Yes, good question. This is, how would I say? Generally, we don't. And we certainly don't want to establish, independent worship of Lord Shiva. And our main worship of him is hearing about him in the Shastra and appreciating him and learning lessons from him and following in his footsteps how to be a great devotee. As far as actually worshiping him, my understanding, my opinion is that should be reserved for, like, when you go to Vrindavan and you visit the Gopeshwar temple in near Lohi Bazaar. That's a proper place and time and circumstance to actually literally worship Lord Shiva, because we could understand he's there explicitly in his position of protecting the Dham, protecting the devotees, protecting the circle of the rasa dance, and even taking part in it. So that's an appropriate situation for worshiping Lord Shiva. Or what's the other one? Chakaleshwar at Govardhan, where even I think it's Sanatan Goswami actually resided there for some time doing his bhajan at this Chakaleshwar Mahadev, and there's others. As far as accepting the remnants, you should be very, very careful what the pedigree of those remnants are, because Lord Shiva eats all type of things. He also drinks the ocean of poison, so we don't want to take those remnants. So we don't, but if there's actual Vaishnava understanding of Lord Shiva and proper Krishna Prasad is being offered to him, because remember, Maha Prasad means that it's Krishna Prasad being taken by the devotees and then the other devotees taking those remnants. Not that some nonsense is being offered and the people are taking remnants. So there's limited circumstances, I would say limited, restricted by intelligence, where literal worship or literal taking remnants might be appropriate, but very, very carefully it has to be done. Because in general, the conception of Lord Shiva is not very pure and not very well understood and not very well done. And we don't want to be party to that or be corrupted by that. Does that make sense?
Yes, I'm
And
there's a
perhaps
few
you
there's
have
a
some
few
ideas on it as well.
yeah there's a few letters from Srila Prabhupada where he says, do not take demigod prasadam,
Ah,
do not. But then he says, in the Jagannath Puri, first they offer all the bhoga to Lord Jagannath, and then they offer it to other deities there in the
right,
temple, like Bimala, goddess Bimala is another form of Durga. And
right,
of course, Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur's given name was Bimala Prasad.
right.
So he said, that's the system. So if it's done that way, first offer to Jagannath, and then later offer to the demigods, he said that is our system, but don't
Yeah,
take it directly from the demigods.
yeah.
And then I just wondered, do you happen to know? I don't know whether Srila Prabhupada went to worship Gopeshwar or Chakaleshwar, or
Um,
recommended that. Do you happen to know?
I don't know if he actually particularly either visited or commented on those places. That I don't know. I mean, he lived very close to those places when he was in Vrindavan. I'd have to look it up, but I'm not aware of any comments or visits or anything like that. I know sometimes in his travels in India, he sometimes visited demigod temples and he would offer his respects and instruct the devotees to do so, but particular on that, I'm not sure. I know he comments in Krishna book about the Katyayani worship of the gopis and explaining, why they do that and how they do that. But as the history you recounted make I think makes very clear that it should be very carefully done and uh, carefully understood. Is that all right?
Of course.
Thank you. Hare Krishna. Any other questions or comments? Yes.
Hare Krishna Acharya Prabhu, thank you
Hare
for
Krishna Prabhu.
very informative class. What is the connection between Advaita Acharya and Lord Shiva?
I let's see. I actually have that particular volume handy because that's where that verse about Lord Balaram being the origin of the Dasya Bhav comes from. I think it said that he's an expansion of Sada Shiva. Let's see if I may not be able to. It also says here, Shri Advaita is the main limb of Mahavishnu.
Mm.
I might not be able to find it impromptu here. I'll give myself 10 more seconds to look. In the section I'm looking at now, he's mainly being associated as an expansion of Mahavishnu. I seem to remember him also being related somehow with Sadashiva. But so I can't say for sure, can't say anything conclusively right here, except that the conclusion of all of it, I'm sorry, the part I do remember. Let's see now. Thinking he, Sri Advaita Acharya, is a disciple of Sri Madhavendra Puri, Lord Chaitanya obeys him, respecting him as his spiritual master. To maintain the proper etiquette for the principles of religion, Lord Chaitanya bows down at the lotus feet of Sri Advaita Acharya with reverential prayers and devotion. He Sri Advaita Acharya, however, considers Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu his master, and he thinks of himself as a servant of Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. He forgets himself in the joy of that conception and teaches all living entities, you are the servants of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. So I'm not sure exactly, I can't really expand on that now about his relationship, the Tattva relationship with Lord Shiva, although, like I said, my memory is sort of reminding me that there's something there, but I can't really expound on it now. But ultimately, whatever his path or chain of expansion is he's the servant of Krishna, as all the expansions are. Sorry, I couldn't give a more conclusive answer there. Anything else? Question or comments?
Thank you, Prabhu. I guess where I was going to go with that is that would our worship of Lord Shiva be through then Advaita Acharya and the Panchatattva and the Sankirtan movement?
I think
but-
that's a good way, a sort of healthy way of looking at it.
Yeah.
Just in case anyone's afraid that if you're afraid of neglecting Lord Shiva, that's a way to do it in a nice way, in a Siddhantic way. I think that's nice. And actually, all these, great persons and Balaram and demigods and Shiva and all of these persons appeared in Mahaprabhu's pastimes. So that's one way to appreciate, I think. Anything else?
We have a question for you. You come into discussion many times with devotees that come from a Hindu upbringing. And so then I guess the question comes, you hear statements about, so that their idea of Lord Shiva is different than being a devotee of Krishna. The approach, what do you suggest the approach should be if they still have an attachment to demigod worship or worship of Lord Shiva? Should it be to kind of remove that from your worship, or to try to transform your conception of Lord Shiva as a devotee so if they are devotees of Lord Shiva but for the wrong reasons,
Yeah.
should we try to make them devotees of Lord Shiva for the right reasons, or just try to kind of get out of that whole realm of demigod worship because it's just the attachments may be too strong?
Yeah. That's an interesting question. A lot of it, I think, has to be done on a more one-on-one level. In a practical sense, I think it has to be done more on a one-on-one level. But it's inescapable that demigod worship is condemned by Prabhupada. Prabhupada quotes Narottam Das Thakur. Narottam Das Thakur was a Hindu, but he rejected demigod worship. But it needs to, and every culture brings pluses and minuses to their Krishna consciousness. Like Prabhupada appreciated about the Westerners, that they're very, bold and energetic and productive, and he appreciated that and engaged that in serving Krishna and spreading Krishna consciousness. But he also understood the minuses that are very high degrees of lust. Our tendency towards changing and concocting is there. And so Indians, we know how much Prabhupada would glorify Indians and those of Indian culture. I can't remember a source for this, but I even remember an instance of Prabhupada saying that demigod worshippers are better than the so-called God worshippers of the West, because in the West, the so-called God worshippers are mainly impersonal and don't actually obey God. But the Indians at least have faith in a higher being, in a Devata. It just needs to be transferred exclusively to Krishna. So practically, it should be handled on an individual level, mostly. Someone who's preaching to and guiding that family should guide them and gradually bring them to the proper understanding of who and what the demigods are, and how to and how not to properly understand and worship them, what may be appropriate and not. And perhaps there's some leeway in that also. But eventually we all have to come to a higher understanding. We can't rest on just our material tradition, whether it's Western or whether it's Indian. We ultimately have to go by Siddhanta. What's the Shruti Smriti Pranadi Pancharatra Vidim Vina? That if we neglect the conclusion of the Shastras, and part of that conclusion is not to worship demigods, but to worship Krishna, that if we neglect that for this reason or that, that's a spot on our devotional service. So it's delicate. We don't want to discourage anyone, but we also want to, all of us, come to the highest plane of devotional service. Again, I feel like I'm waffling so much on this issue that I'm not sure I'm really giving anything of value or benefit. But demigod worship should be rejected, separate from Krishna should be rejected and should be taught that, but every individual has to be handled in a way that's sensitive to where they're at, and even things like family tradition and cultural background. Sorry, I couldn't give a better answer, a more concrete answer.
No, I think that's a very practical answer, that you have to really understand the individual.
Yeah.
Where they're coming from, what their level of attachment is, what their understanding is.
Right. And even better, not another idea came into my head, that those who are, if there's for example, an Indian family who is still attached to demigod worship, then perhaps an Indian family who has come to a higher understanding of Krishna consciousness and understands the place or the lack of place for demigod worship, that might be the ideal people to preach to a family like that. With some, because then, the issue of cultural sensitivity is sort of automatically taken care of there. And they might be able to, see the truth in someone who's more part of their culture. That's possible. And some people might be amenable just to philosophy. But everything has to be done intelligently. Everything has to be done delicately. If by our preaching, we drive someone away from Krishna consciousness, then that's not preaching, that's anti-preaching. But yeah, there's a lot that could be said and done about that. A lot of different ways to handle it.
Thank you, Prabhu.
Thank you. You're welcome. Anything else? Questions or comments? Actually, it's after 9 o'clock. Thank you very much for everyone's very kind attention. I hope everyone's doing well and everything's going well up in Philadelphia. Vanchakalpatarubhyascha kripasindhubheva-cha patitanam pavanebhyo vaishnavebhyo namo namah. Hare Krishna. Everybody have a wonderful day.
Hare Krishna. Thank